Welcome to Insights into Northeast Michigan, a WBKB News public affairs program. Insights deals with the issues affecting those within the community, as well as Northeast Michigan and the state. And now, Insights into Northeast Michigan.
Welcome to Insights. I'm Sherry Stewart. This month we're celebrating Women's History Month. Every March since 1987, Congress and U.S. presidents have designated the month as Women's History Month. On this episode, we're celebrating the accomplishments and vital contributions of women in history with short stories that highlight some of the most fascinating women of our time. Our stories begin right here in Michigan.
In 1888, Eva Bellis's attempt to vote received little public attention. Her response, however, set an important precedence for years to come. The stage was set in Flint, Michigan, where Bellis went to the polls to vote for school trustees. But not so fast. The state constitution made no provision for women voters.
Specifically, the law had to do with the Flint schools. And but there were a lot of people who were against women voting. They didn't think that women should make political decisions. They thought that the husband should make the political decisions and have the vote in the family. There were people in Flint. There was a suffrage. There was sentiment for suffrage where people thought women should vote. So former Governor Bagol, he had been governor in the early 1880s. He established a suffrage association for equal suffrage, and he lived in Flint at the time, so she probably at least was aware of him.
To settle the matter, Bellis sued in Genesee Circuit Court and won. An appeal followed, but the Michigan Supreme Court upheld the lower court. Bellis should have been allowed to cast her ballot. Bellis was a trailblazer for women in her time. She was passionate in her belief that women, just as men, should have the right to vote.
I would guess she was a pretty determined person. She had grown up in Vermont, and somehow I'm not sure how she got to Michigan. Married her husband, they moved to Flint, and had one child. And so she managed to find lots of friends. And so about the time that she made the vote, she also established her own suffrage organization. There was a real small clip in one of the local Flint papers saying that they met for an hour at her house. And so she found people of like mind. And so she must have been someone who was able to organize and find people who agreed with what she thought too.
She would eventually divorce and move to Cleveland, Ohio, where she taught school. Bellis died at 59 years old. Her legacy as one committed to improving the lives of women lives on to this day.
The State Bar of Michigan has a legal milestones program where they look for a particular case or legal issue of interest, and her case was designated as a legal milestone because it was something that was so in the forefront. And that it has a lasting legacy. So they dedicated a plaque, and so that's part of the reason that I even knew about the case, because I knew it was a legal milestone.
A fascinating story indeed. Next up, we'll take a look at the work of Daisy Elliott.
Daisy Elliott is described as a gentle warrior and credited with being one of our most prolific standard bearers of justice and equality. The Elliott-Larsen Civil Rights Act, which bears her name, prohibits discrimination on the basis of race, sex, religion, national origin, and marital status.
Daisy Elliott, as you said, was the writer and co-sponsor of the Elliott-Larsen Civil Rights Act, which was Michigan's first civil rights act after an act that came out in 1875 after the American Civil War. So that's almost 100 years in between. At the time of the first Civil Rights Act that Michigan had in 1875, women could not vote. Black Michiganders, black men had just received the right to vote about 4 years earlier. So it was really a revolutionary piece of legislation, but it was a product of its time. And so as the 20th century moved on, as Michigan continued to diversify and become more and more sort of the multicultural state that we know of it today, and also as sort of people in power started to change. You started to have more women, you started to have more people who were not white enter into the legislature. There was, a real push to codify protections against discrimination in Michigan law. And Daisy Elliott was the person who not only wrote the legislation, but she was the one that every year, year after year, would reintroduce it, trying to find someone she could work with in the Republican Party who would be willing to co-sponsor the legislation, because she knew that unless it had bipartisan support, it would never pass.
It took several years, but Elliott eventually prevailed and found Mel Larson, who signed on as a co-sponsor of the bill.
He was a young Republican from Oxford, and he was, I think, like 1 or 2 years in the Michigan legislature when, word got to Daisy Elliott that he was really interested in civil rights legislation, that he might be the Republican who would co-sponsor this for her. Everything I've read of her, and what her family has said, and what Mel Larson, who co-sponsored this piece of legislation with her, has said, is that she was just an incredibly kind person, and that she was someone that you wanted to work with.
Elliott's entrance into politics was unconventional, but her legacy will span generations.
Another reason why I find her really inspirational is because she didn't enter into politics until she was in her 40s. We had a similar situation happen in 2018 with a lot of women getting into politics because of what they saw was happening in the world. Something recently that happened with Daisy Elliott was we have a building that's part of the campus of the state of Michigan, an office building that was known as the Cass building. And last year, Gretchen Whitmer decided to rename the Cass building the Elliott Larson building. And this is the first government building in the state of Michigan that's named after Black women. And I think it's a definite gesture in sort of memorializing this incredible woman and making sure that every person who comes to Michigan knows her name.
Daisy Elliott passed away in 2015 at age 98.
Insights will return after these messages.
Women's History Month is a celebration of the past as well as the present. From education to sports, business, entertainment, and politics, women are shaping history in real time. Amanda Gorman, National Youth Poet Laureate, made history as she delivered her original composition, The Hill We Climb, at President Joe Biden's inauguration. Gorman is the youngest inaugural poet in recent history.
When day comes, we ask ourselves, where can we find light in this never-ending shade? The loss we carry, a sea we must wade. We've braved the belly of the beast. We've learned that quiet isn't always peace, and the norms and notions of what just isn't always just is.
It was so exciting. Not just for me as a poet, I know the whole world embraced her because what she was talking, it was inspirational and it was aspirational. So it gave us something to go forward with, something to look forward to, a new vision. We are going into a peak, a time of enlightenment. And I think Ms. Gorman ushered that enlightenment in. And she takes us through so much. And then at another time, she says something that's so profound. She says, we lay down our arms so we can reach out our arms.
Like Gorman, fellow poet Semaj Brown is also making history in real time as Flint, Michigan's first poet laureate.
And so my project, my civic project, is called the Poetry Pod Project. And we just call it P3 for short. So I imagine different pods all over the city learning poetry in different ways. But we're going to also combine literacy. We're using poetry to teach literacy through gameplay. We have all types, I've developed all types of curriculum with games that the children can learn. Because sometimes children who haven't had success in reading, if you say, let's read, oh, they don't want to read. But if you say, let's play a game, and it's a reading game, they're all with it. And it's a lot of fun. It's fun for me, it's fun for them.
And Gorman's history-making performance has helped set the stage.
What this could do, what I'm hoping for, that it makes poetry more accessible. And that young people say, ooh, I like that poem. I wonder how she did that. I wonder how you learn how to write like that. I want to learn more about poetry, which means they want to be literate, which means they want to read, which means they want to write, which means the incarceration rate will decrease, because right now there's a one-to-one correlation between illiteracy and the penal system with our youth.
As we celebrate Women's History Month, Semaj has a simple yet powerful message for all women.
It is important, I think, I encourage all to get an education or to get a skill. But you are legitimate because you were born. An education or a skill doesn't make you legitimate. The class, how many degrees you have, your circumstance that you're born into, it doesn't make you illegitimate. And I want to make that clear to all the women.
And that's advice that some of the youngest women in our community are already embracing. Coming up, we'll hear how our local Girl Scouts are making history in real time. Just as Girl Scouts founder Juliette Gordon Lowe envisioned, our local Scouts are learning to thrive in 5 key areas. By developing a strong sense of self, seeking challenges and learning from setbacks, displaying positive values, forming and maintaining healthy relationships, and identifying and solving problems in the community. 14-year-old Cassia recently earned the Silver Award.
So the Silver Award is the second highest award in Girl Scouts, and the way you earn it is you help your community in a sustainable way.
As a future marine biologist, Cassia has her eyes set on making a difference in the world.
I'm inspired by Oprah Winfrey and Mary Curie.
And why do those ladies inspire you?
Oprah, because she's just a really good businesswoman and the confidence that she has. And Mary, because of all the advancements that she made in science when women weren't as big in the field at that time.
Fellow Scout Kahlan is all about promoting unity. She has her heart set on one day being an educator.
My group made a peace book and we give it to the Peace Coalition. And it's just, we asked our community for ideas on how to be more peaceful, and we put it into a book and gave it to them.
Now, when you think about things that you want to do in your future, what types of people do you look at? What types of people inspire you?
I think teachers inspire me a lot because they treat every student the same way when they meet them. They don't judge them at all, and they put up with a lot of stuff from those students, but they come to school every day.
Sounds like, do you have an interest in being an educator one day?
Yes.
13-year-old Samantha has dedicated her time in the Girl Scouts to helping make sure people have enough food to eat. She hopes to one day have a career in the military.
Well, I'm making a food bank at a local church, and it will be community stocked, and you can take any sort of non-perishable food from it whenever you need it.
Making a difference in their community while making history in real time is what it's all about for these young ladies. They want everyone to know that being a Girl Scout is about more than selling cookies. That's only a fraction of what they do. A Girl Scout troop creates a safe space where girls can try new things, develop a range of skills, take on leadership roles, and just be themselves. And that's how you make history.
Insights will return after these messages.
Welcome back to Insights. We thought we'd finish off this segment letting you know a little bit about the ladies that I work with and who the women are in our lives that have inspired us as we continue our journey as a journalist and celebrating Women's History Month. So I know you know Tiffany Maddox here, who is our 11 o'clock anchor, and I believe you're waking up every morning with Tiffany Maddox at 6:30 a.m. So thanks for joining me, ladies.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
You know, I just love Women's History Month because it's such a time that we get to really, highlight the work that women really do. What are your thoughts on Women's History Month?
I think so too. As you were talking about Women's History Month, I really had to think like who inspired me and, all the women and how they've contributed.
Right. What about you, Tiffany?
It's just interesting to find out about different women in general and their contributions. I think it's always something that can help inspire you or give you perspective in your current situation that you're in.
Yeah, and I think for us, we have a twofold because I believe each of us have someone that's inspired us to get in this business and then personally. So let's just start there. So Stephanie, tell me your story.
When I think back to who inspired me, there's a lot of women that, I can choose because, I loved entertainment. So there was that side and, so many different people growing up. But the one person that I would have to say inspired me is my mom. And I know that sounds kind of cliche because, who doesn't say my mom? But it really was her because when I was young, I think, you and I have talked personally where I've shared with you how I wanted my mom to be like this lady that, had the big afro and the big hoop earrings and jeans that cut off her circulation. I just wanted her to be that woman. My mom was conservative, and she was more of a sophisticate, and I was like, ugh, so boring. But when I think back, when I go places with her, when she had speaking engagements and things like that, I remember like being captivated by her, the way she commanded a room and the way she spoke, and she was so confident, and she just got up there and she'd look around a room and she just took over. And I remember thinking as a little kid, I can do that, and I'd practice and and I didn't know what that would morph into. So yeah, if I had to say who inspired me and who is the person behind me wanting to do what I do now, it would be my mom.
Tiffany.
Well, I was raised by a single mom, of course, so she instilled a lot of good qualities in me. I like to joke because she's a little rough around the edges, and sometimes when I parent my own daughter, it tends to come out. But that's one person that kind of pushed me to do the things that I really love to do, which was number one, dance. Number two was just kind of pursuing my dreams, personally. Growing up, I'm a kid of the 90s, so I was like enamored by Carmen Harlan, of course, in Detroit, and Amir Jacobson. Like when they spoke and the news was on, like I listened. So, I kind of see those two women as definitely inspirations to becoming a journalist. Of course, so my mother and those two ladies from the news industry. Also, I had an English teacher and dance teachers that pushed me to, continue dancing and continue writing and really, putting forth those efforts to kind of morph into what I am now. So
yeah, and it's almost like there's a potpourri of people that inspire us to to pursue the dreams that we have in our heart. I'll say for me it was Norma Quarles. So my story, I happened to see her on television. I don't know, I'm sure I'm dating myself, it's been years ago. But she worked for NBC, she worked for CNN and also PBS. And it was one Saturday morning, me and my siblings were watching cartoons and somebody happened to turn the channel and there she was. And she was given some type of news update. And I remember just being mesmerized because at that time there were not a lot of women of color doing network news. And honestly, I was mesmerized, I was fascinated, and I just became so curious. And again, I must have been about 7 or 8. So the next Saturday, I don't want to watch cartoons. I want to see when Miss Norma is coming back on television. And it got to the point, every Saturday for just months on end, I would just wait, when is she coming back? Because, during the week in school, you didn't watch that much television in our household. But and that's when I became interested in journalism. And so I tried to pursue everything, tried to find out a little bit more about her. But that really was it. And I guess personally, of course, my mom too, but also personally, certainly my grandmother. So my grandmother was a woman of modest means. She worked at the hospital, but I was so inspired by her because she owned her own home. She was a homeowner, and we know now certainly that that's one of the tenets to, your personal wealth is being a homeowner. And she raised a lot of kids by herself, a single mom, but for her to, I don't know how she did, she must have had some magical budgeting skills because she was able to own her own home, and I just found that about her to be so fascinating. So, that's kind of the mix that's kind of, I believe, helped me enter this path in terms of journalism. Well, we are just about out of time, so before we go, what advice do you have for women this month as we celebrate Women's History Month? And we'll leave it with that.
If I had to give advice, it would be if there's something that's on your mind that you want to do it. Just do it, period.
I would say to be true to yourself, be authentic, and, self-care, definitely, taking care of yourself, and that's the best that you can do. That's the best that you can do.
Mm-hmm. And I would agree with both of those, and I probably don't have much more to add. I'm a huge proponent of self-care and definitely believing in yourself. And if you're not doing that, this is definitely the month to start, Women's History Month. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Well, that's all we have for you today. If you have a question, comment, or story idea, we'd love to hear from you. You can email us at news@wbkb11.com. I'm Sherry Stewart. Thank you for watching, and have a great week.
Insights into Northeast Michigan is produced by WBKB News. This has been a production of Thunder Bay Broadcasting Corporation. All rights reserved.